We will begin, though, with the 2 Mile Chasers, where it's all about Jonbon and El Fabiolo. This is really a 2-horse race for the Champion Chase. They both strutted their stuff separately over the weekend. Who impressed you the most, El Fabiolo or Jonbon, Katie Young?
I think I'm a bit half and half. I'm down the middle. I think there was parts of Jonbon that showed us he was extremely good again. His jumping was brilliant. He never made a mistake. He gotten close to 1 or 2 and he fiddled so easily. Like, he's just so neat and tidy over his fences. He saves plenty of energy through his jumping. He settled lovely. He never pulled. He just looked like he was made for it on Saturday. Look, he only won by a few lengths. I know the ground was horrendous. That's the only thing you can pull him on. How much strength and depth was there to the race? Edwardstone, I thought, pulled a bit too hard throughout the race. He looked a bit too keen on that ground for me now, and I kind of thought that would come and bite him on the arse later on in the race, and it maybe did a little bit. I thought El Fabiolo was the opposite. He didn't jump as well. He didn't jump fluently at times. He looked very gassy and probably a little bit too exuberant for his first run. But there was kind of a few little issues they said that maybe was the cause of that. The race wasn't run as strong as he was running last year, and that they kind of put that down to why he was a little bit keen and in Paul's hands for the majority of the way. And they kind of made out to me as if they were thinking about maybe they wouldn't let that happen again. They'd maybe have a horse in there to kind of allow a bit more pace if that were to happen again. But comparing the two now, I think at this stage of the season, after their runs the weekend, I'd probably be siding with Jonbon on the visual appearance that they made over the weekend. I just thought his jumping was a lot slicker, neater, and definitely he was a lot cleverer over his obstacles than El Fabiolo. His jumping needs to improve. I think it will. I think it will come with a stronger run race, and I think a lot of it was down to just his first run. But he can't be making the mistakes he was on Sunday. Look, I think maybe come Cheltenham, I'll be siding with El Fabiolo, to be honest. I think his cruising speed is a lot higher than Jonbon's. I kind of think maybe Jonbon, maybe not yet, maybe next year or in another season or two, they might end up stepping him up and trip. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were to go that way. I just think, I don't know whether Jonbon, does he have a higher cruising speed as El Fabiolo? I don't think he'd be as comfortable as El Fabiolo would be going over a faster pace. That was just my opinion. I think he's getting away with it at over 2 miles against the UK horses at the minute, but to clash with Irish horses, especially El Fabiolo, with how high his cruising speed, I just think you might see a bit of a flaw in him there. That's just kind of what I took on it.
This is really important. This is vital, particularly in terms of our race analysis for the rest of the season. So I need you to answer this question very honestly, Katie. And it is a deeply personal question, but I promise you, it's gonna pay dividends, and it's integral to the overall form of these two horses. Which team were you on heading into the Arkle, El Fabiolo or Team Jonbon?
El Fabiolo.
And now you're gonna jump away from El Fabiolo and go on Team Jonbon.
Only
at how fickle, Katie!
No, only at the back of the second run. I think come March, I'll be on El Fabiolo's team. I just want to see his jumping brush up a little bit. The
thing is, I agree with you almost 100%, and I'd be Team Jonbon as well. Breaking news: Katie and Emmet transferred to Team Jonbon. Sky Sports News, yellow ticker, absolute pandemonium. We'll have to do press conferences and press releases about how Willie Mullins is gutted to lose our support and Nicky delighted. This is a 2-horse race. This division is a 2-horse division. Now, we're going to see some interesting things. The Paddy Power, Bumble, Tinder, Dial-A-Bet chase, whatever the hell that's called these days. The 2 mile grade 1 at Christmas time. I didn't see a price for Blue Lord. He is entered, the defending champion, but Captain Guinness is going to go for that. He'll be a very short price favorite. He's already 6-4. And he should win it. Maybe Blue Lord can put it up to him, and Willie will have Dicer Dynamo and a few others that might be able to step up to the plate. It'll be the same again in the DRF. But they're not, El Fabiolo's not going to go for that. And neither is Jonbon. JP was saying they're going to stay away from El Fabiolo as long as possible. So if El Fabiolo does go for the Clarence House, then Jonbon won't. So you're not going to get that clash until Cheltenham. One is 10-11 and the other is 11-4. If it's a 2-horse race, then it's a coin flip, and I'd rather take the 11-4 Jonbon now and hope they all have to get there as well, by the way. So right now, I would side with Jonbon, but I wouldn't be in love with it. But I certainly wouldn't be in love about taking 10-11 about El Fabiolo. Moscow Flyer and Big Zeb, every now and again, like they were brilliant horses, particularly Moscow Flyer, but they could throw in the odd clunker here and there. Like they would tumble. And if El Fabiolo keeps doing that, he's not going to get away with it. Eventually, George, it will come down. So there's 3 of us on this show. Katie and I are currently with Jonbon. Who are you with?
Well, going into Cheltenham last year, it took me a while to make up my mind. But I was on Team El Fabiolo. I just thought he looked a bit more of a man than what Jonbon
Get that after time in there, George. Good man. Get that after time in.
And there was a little seed planted seeing Jonbon in the Schlur, and it's starting to sprout now. That there wasn't much in it last year, and I think Jonbon's improved a lot. I would be verging on the side of him at the moment. I think what he showed me in the Schlur was that when he has everything in his favour, when he has ground in his favour, the only horse that was able to take him on really was Editeur de G, and he ran well below what we know he can do. And that showed me he can put in a champion chaser's performance when everything's run to suit. What he showed me at the weekend is that when things don't go his way, he can still put in a champion chaser performance. Because that was, if he had run in the Henry VIII last year on that ground, he'd have got beat. He was too soft, his jumping wasn't good enough, and he couldn't have dealt with the sustained pressure from Haddox de Zobo. Haddox de Zobo...
Sorry, I have no idea what the hell this thing is, and I don't know why it keeps popping up on the screen. I promise you it has nothing to do with me.
It's because you're loving everything I'm saying, Emmet. That's what it is. It's just going, yeah, absolutely.
Big thumbs up, George. Keep going.
Look, Haddox de Zobo did everything to get him under pressure. Going down the railway fences last time, Jack Tudor was fantastic on him. For all he hadn't sat on before, he gave him a perfect ride, and everything went right for Haddox. And you saw him, like, he'd take a length out of Jonbon in the air, and away from the fence, Jonbon just make it up again. Like, even if his jumping isn't that fast and that slick in itself, how fast he gets away from his fences, I think, keeps him on that sort of level of how a champion chaser should jump. And then despite all that, once he burned Haddox de Zobo off, you'd thought he might have weakened himself up for Edwardstone. And Edwardstone still couldn't get to him. I take your point, Katie, that he's pulled quite hard in bad ground. I still think it's very impressive. Like that, he can sort of, that's how you get a horse like this beat. Is if the one that takes him on first doesn't beat him, the closer will do. And neither of them could get past him. And they're both very talented horses. Edwardstone's only run one bad race in the champion chase. Whatever stones anyone wants to throw at him, he's consistently performed in the 160s.
Yeah, and he bolted up in this race last year.
Exactly. I think, for me, I won't say I'm fully on Team Jonbon, but El Fabiolo has a point to prove now for me. He has to go out. Willie's have been improving for a run anyway. He has to go out next time and do something really special to make me stay on his side going into Cheltenham. Yeah,
the point about Willie's a good one as well, because he's obviously banging in the winners. He's had 15 winners from his last 42 runners for a 36% win strike rate. And then you look back at some of the horses from the weekend. I really fancied that Western Diego who ran in the champion bumper. He blew out as a long odds-on favourite. Watt Path probably didn't like the ground at Cork, but still he was beaten a long way. Zenta was never really going at any point. Shanbally Kid should have run better. Even Impere Pass and Ashrow Diamond. I would have Ashrow Diamond very high on my list of horses for the Mares Hurdle. She's beaten 13 lengths.
The weekend.
Yeah, and I heard Simon Munir on Nick Luck's show today talking about Impere Pass and that they're disappointed he's lost his unbeaten record, but that he will improve. And Patrick was, when he was on this show, he was very much emphasizing he'll improve for the run And since he's been on, he was talking to Gary O'Brien, might have been Clonmel, one of the tracks, but he was saying you'll see significant improvement from him as well. But it does just seem like some of these Mullins, look, they're not all going to win. They're not all machines. But some of them, you look back at them and think, geez, you should have got a little bit closer. Or you should have run a bit better. So I would just, look, I think it's a talking point. It's interesting with El Fabiolo. He's definitely, that 5 lengths defeat of Jonbon, like, this is a total flip-flop from me. I was adamant that if Jonbon was going to win a Grade 1 this season, it'd be the Ryanair at Cheltenham, or maybe the Gold Cup. Like, to your point, Katie, going out in trip is the future with him. But if this really is just a 2-horse race, then I'll take the 11-4 about the underdog. And Jonbon has gone into Cheltenham the last 2 seasons as a winter favourite for the Supreme and the Arkle. It would be such a Jonbon thing to do, to be the winter underdog and then come out and actually win his first Cheltenham Festival race as the underdog in the champion chase against a horse who thumped him last year.
Yeah.
I think El Fabio definitely needs to prove something next time out, as George said. I think if he went on to win by 10 lengths in his next race on the bridle, we'd all be coming back and to this point and be on Team El Fabiolo, but we'll have to wait and see what he does next. But I wouldn't be surprised me if that did happen with him.
Yeah.
Willie's definitely needing a run, and I don't think it's a bad thing that some of them are getting beaten first time out. You don't want them to be fully wound up, race fit at this stage of the season. It's a long season, and I think that's why Willie always comes up on top at the end of the season. That's why his horses always run well. Come Punchestown time, they've just so much left in the tank because he trains them. He trains them throughout the season. He doesn't have them fully wound up at this point to go and win, by 10 lengths. He's really conserving them for the season. And with that in mind, I think is just how he trains them. So I wouldn't be worrying too much about some of his horses getting beat at this time of the year anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point to make as well. And most of these horses are being beaten. It is their seasonal debut. So let's see what they do in their second starts. There's no need to panic. We don't need to put in the gif of absolute chaos in the background of anything, but just it is an interesting talking point. And yeah, El Fabiolo sets a massive standard. But Nicky Henderson keeps saying Jonbon wasn't right in the Arkle. He didn't fire as much as he would. And I was absolutely adamant that was just Nicky Henderson copium. The more I think about it, I'm not so sure. So
it's one of those things where, like, El Fabiolo's done nothing wrong. I've seen a couple of people already coming out and going, "Oh, he wasn't anything special on his debut." He's done all he had to do first time out. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. It's just Jonbon has shown he's improved, and El Fabiolo on his next start, he's one run behind Jonbon. He has to go out in a graded race, and he's got to be taken on and win by 10 lengths. So if he makes all the running and wins by 10 lengths, I'm not interested. I want to see him taken on, horses trying to half length him all the way around and see him go away again from top class horses. Because that's what Jonbon's done. Like, Haddix Des Obo could not get him stretching down the back, no matter what he did. And I said that to me is as good as Haddix Des Obo is. That was a brilliant run from him. A brilliant run. And he couldn't get Jonbon. He couldn't even get 2 lengths clear of Jonbon going down the back. Every time they landed, he was back on his girths again. And
he's a good horse. He would have won that race at Cheltenham against Dancing on My Own if he hadn't tipped up. It is also worth pointing out that El Fabiolo literally beat Phil Dorr by 37 lengths in the Irish Arkle. And this time only beats him by 4.
I do think Phil Dorr hasn't made improvement this year. I don't think he was fully right last year. I used to ride him a little bit in Gordon's and his juvenile year, and he never showed me what he did last year, what he showed me when I rode him at home. I just think it's kind of that transition from, a 4-year-old into kind of open company. It takes them a season or 2 to kind of find their own feet. And I don't think he's about as horse as he showed us last year. I do think he's back on the improvement. He's back up to kind of the level that he was showing us as juvenile. So I wouldn't be kind of knocking that form too much. That's just kind of how I take on Phil Dorr anyway.
Do you think chasing came a year too soon for him, Katie?
You what, sorry?
Do you think chasing came a year too soon for him?
Yeah, I think a lot of them juveniles, they kind of, their juvenile year is completely different to their kind of next year and the year after. I think they take a season or two to kind of find their feet. And I think with Phil Daw, definitely, I think he struggled, and he showed us that last 2 seasons. However, I do think this year he's kind of showing me back to what he was that juvenile year. I think
if you look last year, all his good runs are when he was still receiving his allowance.
Yeah.
Then when he lost it was when the wheels fell off.
Yeah, that's it. But I think he's showing definitely more than he did last year for sure.
I love his run behind Dino Blue. I loved it. Like,
I was just going to say, he paid a real,
and
he paid a real compliment to her.
Yeah. I thought that might have been a little fluke, Phil Daw kind of running well, and I thought maybe it wasn't looking good on Dino Blue that he got so close. But I actually do think he's improved a lot this year, and I wouldn't be too worried about how close Phil Daw was to El Fabiolo at all.
There was no fluke about the way he travelled there on the weekend, where the way he came there travelling, like he was miles better than the rest. Miles better.
Did you? I don't know whether you seen on. We have RT, and they had a camera angle from kind of along the side, so it wasn't head on. It was like from a car, and it was falling around. And if you watch that, the stride on El Fabiolo was just unbelievable. The way he covers the ground. Like, he's completely different to Jonbon. Jonbon's got more of a shorter stride, a bit choppier. El Fabio, just the way he lengthened across the last 2 fences was just unbelievable. He just eats the ground up.
Yeah, it looks
so easily.
Yeah.
It was really nice to watch. Actually, I'm not sure whether Racing TV. I was watching it on RT, and I'm not sure if Racing TV showed it in that direction, but it was.
I don't think we did. No,
I was watching RTV's coverage. They had some side angle coverage, but not as intense as that. Although some of that side angle stuff they do is class.
Horses with long strides like that it can take them longer to get used to jumping fences because the strides themselves are so long.
Yeah,
you've got less options when you get to the fence, and it might be. They have to learn to put themselves on the right stride at the fence because you can't change it for them last minute.
Yeah.
Because, like say, if one horse has a stride of 9 feet, their stride's 12 feet.
Yeah.
That's a very, very small line. If you're stuck on a stride you don't want, it causes problems. It's tiny little. That's why I always say little horses tend to jump fences so well. It's because they've got about 3 different options of where they can take off from going into a fence. And also, I think they learn when they're smaller that they have to jump because if they don't jump well, it's going to hurt. Whereas big horses can just plough through.
I actually think that's why Jonbon is so good over his fences when he gets in tight, because he's got a shorter stride and he can fiddle very quickly and he's very nimble over his fences. Whereas El Fabiolo, like you said, he's got that longer stride and he kind of trying to gather himself up to get in and to fiddle at one he finds it a lot more difficult than say Jonbon would.
He has to learn to measure them so he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
The thing, whereas I think Jonbon has learned that this year. To me, he's not meeting too many fences wrong. Whereas El Fabiolo is still sort of getting to a fence and reacting when he gets there if he's not wrong. But there's no reason to think he won't learn that before Cheltenham.
Yeah.
How much more of a risk does that make El Fabiolo taking a tumble than Jonbon?
There's certainly more chance of it, but then he's a big horse. He could easily get it wrong and stand up. Do you know what I mean? But there's certainly much more chance of a costly mistake. I wouldn't necessarily say there's more chance of him falling because he's a very sturdy horse. He's got feet in all 4 corners. He'd have to make a hell of a mistake to come down.
Well, that's a really good point to make because that was one of the criticisms of him going into the Arkle. The Jonbon fans were adamant that he won't get round. He doesn't jump well enough, but he does. He has a unique way of doing it. But the way you've explained his stride, perfectly explains why. The hopes of Edward Stone going for the King George have been completely dashed. He's not running, and he's not going to run again this year. It's going to be early in the new year. Will be his next start. Do you think they're going to stick with 2? He's talked about going for the Ascot Chase next, which would then lead to him potentially going for a Ryanair. Does he appeal to you for that, George?
He would do, yeah. I was talking to a lad from Alan King's who's just started working for us, and he said that King's been wanting to step him up in trip all along. So I don't really know what's taken them so long. But I just think, I know that they weren't to know that Huntingdon was going to be off, and there were very positive noises about Huntingdon on Saturday.
Yeah, that changed at 11 p.m. at night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think if they were planning on stepping him up to 3 miles, he'd have run in the Peterborough at the weekend, or he'd tried to run in the Peterborough at the weekend. I certainly don't think we'll see him beyond 2.4 this year now. I don't think they've left themselves much time. Have one run over 2.4, and then I think we'll probably see him in the Ryanair. I think, because what's the point? He's proved he can't beat Fabiolo. He's proved he can't beat Jonbon. He's improved a little bit probably from last year, maybe a tiny amount, but not as much as these two will have. It'd be silly, I think, to run anywhere but the Ryanair if he goes to Cheltenham at all.
Yeah, that does sound like the current thinking. And look, we'll see how he steps up. But right now, we are all Team Jonbon, but very much with an eye to the fact that El Fabiolo might very well actually be the best chaser in training, never mind the best 2-miler. So we're Team Jonbon for now, Nicky. We're waving our Jonbon scarves now, but we'll be all back on Team El Fabiolo by the time the Cheltenham Festival comes around.